Hello and welcome back to the Observation Conversations off-season episode. Hopefully the first of many, but we will see. That's the whole point of off-season. We just previously talked to you about how to survive your Super Bowl party, but now we wanted to do some reflecting on the 2023 season for movies.
Yes.
You know, we're a month out of 2023, and we thought, hey, let's look back at some of our favorite films. So
Absolutely.
I'm Reid. I'm joined by Jonathan, as always.
Everybody.
My favorite person in the world.
Oh, you're too kind.
Yeah,
It's
well,
true, but you're too kind.
It's true, yeah. No, more.
Yeah, bring it a bit more, actually, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'll let him take it away. What are we doing?
Yeah, we could call this the Observation Conversations 2023 Movie Awards, because this is our top 10 ranking, but this is also kind of like our special recognition of the movies that we loved and brought us a lot of joy last year. And you know, I suggested we do this because this has been on my mind lately. I just put together my own top 10 list for movies last year a few days ago, and it didn't really hit me until I made that 2023 was actually a really great year for movies. You know, I mean, when we were going through it, I mean, obviously there were some big hits, but it felt like, you know, not necessarily any more special than any other year. But I compare it to 2022 or 2021. This was actually a really strong year. You know, we got some really great movies in 2020.
I mean, not to be that guy, but 2021, you know, we were still also recovering from the pandemic.
Sure. I mean, it was a very weird year. It was a very wonky year. But so I guess what I'm trying to say is.
But I understand the sentiment, and you're right. This was a big year for movies.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I should say that for me, this is the strongest year for movies that we've had post-pandemic, since the conclusion of the pandemic. Of course, things have been, you know, very wonky because obviously COVID disrupted everything. But I feel like while obviously we had some big hits in 2021, like Spider-Man: No Way Home and the first Dune, and obviously in 2022 we had huge hits like Top Gun: Maverick and Avatar 2, and you know, and Everything Everywhere at Once became a big indie hit and all that. But I feel like for me, 2023 was the year that really cemented that movies are back. You know, it's still, I mean, yes, I mean, there are still some, you know, some lingering issues due to the pandemic. And obviously we had some big strikes this past year, the dual WGA strike and SAG-AFTRA strike that disrupted things, which, by the way, we're very happy that came to a successful conclusion. The writers got a great deal. SAG-AFTRA got a great deal. You know, so happy for them that they got what they're due and they got some of those protections that they were looking for.
Support your local unions.
Absolutely. And so that was very big for us last year. But yeah, I mean, I feel like we're back. You know, I feel like we got not just a lot of great movies, but such an incredible breadth of great movies across different genres, as we'll see here. And so for me, 2023 was a great year for movies. I feel like movies are back. We'll see if 2024 can live up, you know, now that we'll start to see some consequences from the disruptions caused by the strikes and the work stoppages. But this was a great year. This was a really strong year. And across several different genres and several different areas that normally I ignore, honestly. But this year really brought them back to the forefront for me. So with that, I guess let's jump in with what movies are coming in at 10th place in our top 10.
Yeah. So I have to, before I can say what my 10th place movie is, I do have to issue a bit of a caveat, which is that I've realized in making this list that I didn't actually see that many movies this year, which is unfortunate. And I think that's something I need to work more on, is just seeing more movies in general. But recounting, it's like I think I only saw like 12 movies.
Wow.
Or at least 12 new releases, I should say. And, two of those, are obviously not on this top 10 list. One being that like Netflix Christmas special where Ed Helms and his family all swap bodies with each other and it was kind of weird. And the other is Quantumania. So that's the bar that we're starting with. Is just the 10th movie I saw that happens to be better than those two. And for me, that was the Mario movie.
Okay.
Personally, I didn't care for it all that much. I thought it was entertaining to a degree, but also pretty silly. But it's the 10th best movie out of 12, and so it has to be on the list, I guess. So that's where we're working from.
Yeah, no, I have to say, if we were doing a dishonorable mentions list, then Quantumania would, of course, be on it.
Yeah.
That movie was just such a stinker, my God. I mean, to talk about just a green screen nightmare, good Lord. But okay, fair enough. As you can see, we have another Super Mario Bros. Movie on here, so that will be making an appearance on my list, but we'll see where it is. It might surprise you.
I assume not 10th based on the phrasing of that comment.
It is not 10th. It is, so my number 10 on my top 10 list is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I have to say that, opinions were very mixed when this movie came out. For one, I loved it. For me, listen, it's not perfect, but for me, this brought me back to so much of what I loved about the Indiana Jones character and those stories in the first place. I feel like, it would have been such a letdown for such an iconic character, such an iconic role for Harrison Ford if Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is his last ever outing as Indiana Jones. Obviously everyone's saying, Harrison Ford, he's so old. I mean, can he really even do an Indiana Jones movie anymore? I'm very glad that they gave him one more chance to close out this franchise that he made on his terms. And he did a fantastic job. I thought this was a great adventure movie. I thought that it had a lot of set pieces that I really enjoyed. I loved the New York City parade chase. I loved the the Morocco chase through the streets was okay. I liked the underwater sequence with the eels. I thought that was really good. We got the classic Tomb Raider stuff. I thought that oh dear, what's her name? Let me pull up Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I thought that she was actually a really fun addition. I thought she was actually really funny. And I liked her as a sidekick quite a bit. I liked all the nostalgia beats. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. I liked the nostalgia beats. I love the music coming back, that great strong John Williams score. I love that we're back to punching Nazis and fighting Nazis. That intro sequence in World War II, awesome. That sequence was so cool. That was the perfect way to start that movie. I was vibing with it instantly. And so, it's not, you can't really say it's back to basics because in many ways this movie is the biggest in scope that Indiana Jones has ever been. Yeah. And the finale, I think, is divisive for a lot of people. I loved it, Spoiler alert, so skip ahead a few seconds if you don't want to hear how the movie ends. But for me, I thought the time travel gimmick at the end was really well done, because the Indiana Jones films, they've always had an element of the supernatural, of the mystical. And I don't think that compared to the Ark of the Covenant or stuff like that, the Holy Grail, time travel is that much not much harder of a mental leap than what we've already seen, or freaking aliens in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Yeah. I don't feel like time travel is that big of a leap for an Indiana Jones movie, and I think they executed it really well. And that was just a great twist. I never would have guessed that this movie would actually have gone there, but they did it, and the whole time we were going there, I was glued to my seat. I was so excited because it's like anything can happen. We've gone beyond what I thought this movie was capable of, and I just thought that was really, really exciting. And so, for me, this was a much, much better send-off for the Indy character than Crystal Skull was. I think that James Mangold did a fantastic job. I think that, and this is what I said in my review on Letterboxd too, I think that the only reason why this movie isn't rated more highly and wasn't more popular was because it came out in the middle of an insanely crowded summer for action adventure movies. We had John Wick Chapter 4 and Mission Impossible 7 and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and Guardians of the Galaxy, and the list goes on and on and on. It's just it was such a crowded summer and this came out right in the middle of it in late June. I feel like people were just distracted by other movies. And I feel like if this had come out a year ago, it would have been much bigger and it would have been rated a lot more highly. So yeah. I loved it, thought it was a great goodbye to this character. And I think they even planted a few seeds of some of the supporting characters that might take a bigger role in the future. So, I definitely would not object to seeing Phoebe Waller-Bridge come back again in some capacity. I thought she was a lot of fun. I love Toby Jones as her dad, who was Indy's sidekick in World War II. I thought he did a fantastic job. It was just a really, really good time. A really great send-off to this character. And even at the end, Indy gets back together with Marion after they were so unhappy.
They recall that famous line. It's like, where does it hurt? Oh, everywhere.
Exactly.
Like, oh, what a great callback.
Yeah, I mean, after all the problems that they had in Crystal Skull, it was so nice to see them be able to come back together again. And, have that as being just a very mature love story, because in the lore of this movie, and this was, I think, also controversial, they killed off Mutt in between Crystal Skull and this one. Shia LaBeouf is gone. He's died in Vietnam, I think.
Yeah.
And so, which, I mean, I never had much love for that character, so I didn't really care. But I know some people were upset that Shia LaBeouf was so tossed aside. But it was just a very mature kind of take on this love story, which is like, these two people, they've been together, they had a kid together, they tried it, and then they ran into difficulties. Their son passed away, they drifted apart. But that doesn't mean they stopped caring about each other. They're still part of one another's lives. I thought this was just a very nice, mature take on these two characters, because let's be honest, they are old people. This is not some young love thing again. This is just two people who are just a part of each other's lives, and they really do care about each other. I thought that was just a very nice, mature angle to take it. So really enjoyed it. It was very close between this and a movie that I'll get to in my honorable mentions, but this just squeaks into the top 10. I think it did a really good job. Its only crime was coming out in the middle of a very crowded summer. So, Okay, number 9. What do you think?
So for number 9, I had Air. Now this is a movie that I had not planned on watching, but it's something I ended up watching with my parents. I thought it was pretty well done. I mean, great performances from everyone. I just felt like it wasn't the most interesting story to tell, because it's not about Michael Jordan. It's about making a sneaker based on Michael Jordan. Which, weird take that we're centering the story on, the white businessman and not the basketball player who
the all-time generation
who was like gave them all this money,
gifted athlete,
earned them all this money. But overall I thought it was really well produced. It was very, very polished. Just didn't leave that much of a long-lasting impression, so that's why it's number 9 for me.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't have Air on my list, so I'll just talk about it briefly here. I went in not expecting much. I mean, I knew it was. This is going to be mainly a hangout film. Let's hang out with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, and Viola Davis, and it's not going to be some big dramatic thing. I get it. So I didn't go in expecting a whole big thing. And listen, it's fine for what it is. I like Ben Affleck as a director. I love Argo. I think that Argo is definitely a movie that I rewatched a few months ago, and that's definitely a really, really strong movie that I really like from the 2010s. So I think Ben Affleck's a great director. But I think this is a movie that he mainly made because he wanted to hang out with his buddies, like Matt Damon. And I think that it didn't really resonate with me that much, because ultimately, as you said, it's not about Michael Jordan, it's about the Nike Shoe Company, which means the big dramatic conflict of this movie is
Trying to design a shoe.
How do we get the third biggest shoe manufacturer in America to be the first biggest shoe manufacturer in America?
Yeah.
Like, that's just not that compelling unless you're like
he prefers Adidas, boo-hoo.
I know, like it's not that you're not that invested in whether or not Nike's going to go from a big shoe company to a huge shoe company. You know, it's just like, you know, especially when you know that they do. You know, it's like there's not even the tension of like, oh, this is a fictional story. No, we know Nike wins, and so you know, it didn't really connect with me for that reason. It's just not that compelling of a conflict to have. But yeah, you know, again, nothing wrong with just hanging out with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and Viola Davis and all those people. So yeah, it's fine, but not on my list. I'll tell you what is on my list. My number 9 pick is, and this could be surprising, A Haunting in Venice. Now, this might surprise some people because Kenneth Branagh's Poirot movies have been kind of lukewarm, kind of so-so for a lot of people. For me, both Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile, I don't regret watching them once. They are fun watches the first time. You know, they're good movies. Branagh's a good director, and those casts are fantastic. They're huge, packed with stars.
Yeah.
You know, they're definitely enjoyable watches the first time. But I've never really had any great desire to revisit either of those movies after watching them the first time. Especially so, you know, and Death on the Nile, I think, had different problems from Murder on the Orient Express. Murder on the Orient Express was very well made, great cast, but the problem is that it sticks so closely to the book. It sticks so closely to the source material that there really are no surprises. And the problem is everyone reads Murder on the Orient Express in high school. And so if you just remember what happens in that, you know exactly what's going to happen and you know exactly how it ends. Obviously, you know, I think it's a good thing and it's an important if you're adapting something to try to be faithful. But at the same time, Branagh is so committed to matching every detail from the book that there are no surprises. And so, again, watch it once, it's fun, but you're not going to, once you know how it ends, you're not going to have any great desire to watch it again, which for me, that's the test of a great murder mystery, is even when you know what happens, do you want to watch it?
Knives Out on Glass Onion.
Exactly.
Arguably better the second time.
I was just about to say that. That's why I love Knives Out and Glass Onion so much, is because not only are they as good the second time and the third time, they're even better because you get to go back and recontextualize stuff and you learn more that you couldn't have known or you couldn't have picked up the first time. And so I love Knives Out and I love Glass Onion for that reason. And so, but that's what happened with Murder on the Orient Express. Death on the Nile, the same problem, which is that was very close to source material, but also that went too heavy into green screen and CGI as well to create those epic Egyptian backdrops and the pyramids and all that. And it just didn't feel like an intimate Poirot mystery, which I think is what a lot of people missed. You know, it was Kenneth Branagh trying to make Poirot into a blockbuster attraction, which that character was never supposed to be. You know, Poirot is deliberately unglamorous, you know. He's a stout, fat, mustachioed Belgian he's the best in the world at solving these murders, but he really cares mainly about smoking cigars and eating much more so than actually, like, he doesn't get off on doing this, you know. This is just what he happens to do. And so this is a deliberately unglamorous character who kind of hates that he's so good at this and who kind of hates that this has become his life. And so I think trying to turn that character into a blockbuster attraction was kind of a mistake. And that's another way where Death on the Nile kind of went a little wrong. This one, though, and so after that, I was like, okay, well, you know what? I'm not that excited for it, but I'll check it out because I do love a good murder mystery. This one, for me, is by far the best of the three. I know you haven't seen it, so I won't spoil it, but this one it gets back to basics. You know, we're stuck in this claustrophobic location. Once again, great cast: Michelle Yeoh and Tina Fey and a bunch of great people. Yeah, Tina Fey's in it too. She's fantastic in it. And we're stuck in this claustrophobic location. And as the name would suggest, a haunting in Venice, unexplainable things start to happen at this seance, right? And it ties into a murder that occurred in this house. And Just all the photography of Venice is beautiful. They have these beautiful shots of Poirot arriving to the party on a gondola as the sun is going down in Venice. And then you could tell, unlike Death and Nile, where there's so much green screen and CGI, you can tell they shot this in Venice for real. Everything is practical. And it just looks so gorgeous. The cast is fantastic. The mystery is great. And this one is particularly good because, unlike Murder on the Orient Express, which everyone has already read, even many Agatha Christie fans aren't familiar with The Haunting in Venice. So Kenneth Branagh could do new things and go in new directions without, causing an outcry because he changed this or because he changed that. It's still faithful to the story, but he's allowed to really kind of inject some more directorial flair into it. And he does. I mean, this isn't a horror movie, but clearly he does like playing on a lot of those tropes to kind of play with your expectations of what should happen. And he captured a lot of those aesthetics really well. Again, I love the practical sets. I love how just pretty that movie looks. And it's a great murder mystery too. It keeps you guessing up until the end, which is really cool. So for me, this trilogy, because I don't know if they're going to bring it back, if they'll do a fourth, but I feel like Branagh probably wants to do other stuff now that he's made 3. Yeah. I feel like this is a trilogy that ended on its strongest note. A Haunting in Venice is the best of the 3 for me, easily. So I really loved it. That was a major surprise W for me, because like I said, I didn't really go in expecting that much, but yeah, I really loved it. For me, this is my favorite murder mystery of 2023. So yeah, really enjoyed it.
And welcome back. We had to step away for a brief minute, but continuing on with our list, we have number 8.
Yes, number 8. Here we go.
Now, I picked something a bit unusual. This is outside of my usual scope, but I had been hearing a lot about it. And I thought it looked kind of interesting. So for number 8, I went with Nimona. Now, this was a Netflix animated movie based on a apparently pretty popular graphic novel about this, I guess, little girl who has the ability to shapeshift into different monsters, and she's helping this knight who's been essentially banished to prove his innocence. And it was adorably animated, I felt. Pretty stunning visuals, great story, and reading about it and watching video essays about it, it's actually a pretty compelling allegory for people who are trans too, which is really interesting. So it has kind of these deeper layers to it, which I really appreciated. And overall, I thought it was a good film.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this one when it came out last summer. Had quite a bit of a buzz around it, good buzz. People are really praising the animation. Yeah. So people seem to like it. So I haven't seen it yet, but I have heard good things about it. So okay, very interesting. For me, my number 8 is, let's use this one, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Okay, well, let's see here. This has been a tumultuous period for Marvel. I think the majority of people have kind of diagnosed it. There was a lot of uncertainty about what the MCU will look like post Endgame. There was a lot of pressure because now not only are we continuing to do 2 to 3 movies a year, but now we're also doing a bunch of TV shows and all this stuff. And, I think that people's mileage has definitely varied with the Marvel output we've gotten in the last 3 years. I think that in general, the Marvel and MCU is in crisis headlines have been overhyped. I don't think that it's as much of a catastrophe as I think
they're
a lot
still
of the doomsayers
going positive at the box office. So clearly they're not still in crisis.
Yeah, I mean, they're still they still tend to be very profitable movies, at least certainly when they do have theatrical movies. And they do still do a lot of good stuff, so I think that, and there are still obviously a lot of very committed and dedicated fans out there, and a lot of just casual fans out there who just look out for Marvel stuff. So, I don't think that
it's been quite as bad as a lot of the doomsayers would have you believe. But it is true that Marvel expanding from going to 9-10 hours of content a year to 30 hours 40 hours plus of content a year, it has been very taxing. And we have had we still get hits, but we get a lot more misses than we used to as well.
Looking at you, Ant-Man.
Well, yeah, and I think that 2023 was definitely a banner year for this phenomenon because I think that on the whole, on balance, I think 2021 was a really solid year for Marvel. I think 2022 was still a quite solid year for Marvel. But I think 2023 is when the cracks really started to show with the beginning of this phase 5. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was just a mess. I mean, that movie, it was an afterthought for the majority of its production, and they had to rush like hell to get it done.
I don't even think it was an afterthought, because you could clearly tell that it had been rewritten and changed at some point. Like, the ending seemed very messy because it felt like it was going to go in a different direction. So I think more than an afterthought, it was just something that got changed the last second and then essentially ruined.
Yeah, I mean, it's baffling to me the approach they took with Quantumania, because I think that clearly the big push for Ant-Man 3 was to make it this big epic thing. We're going to launch Kang as the next big bad of the MCU. This is going to be his first big screen appearance, and we're launching phase. Don't forget, we launched phase 5 with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This is the project that they decided we're going to launch our whole new phase with this movie. And I think that's just a fundamental mismatch with what the Ant-Man movies are. What made the first two, whatever you think about the first two, I'm not going to say they were the best things ever, but the point of those movies is that they're small scale. The point of those, they're supposed to be action comedies, essentially. This is not supposed to have the big, world-ending stakes of an Avengers movie, or even a Captain America movie, or an Iron Man movie, or, something like that. This is supposed to be, your friendly neighborhood Ant-Man, so to speak, who is going on these, these more small-scale capers. And, it's supposed to be more lighthearted and less serious in that way.
I will say, the first Ant-Man was called Mission Impossible with Ants. And so if you were to follow the trend of Mission Impossible, it's not unforeseeable that he would be facing like world-ending events.
Sure.
But that's just a devil's advocate argument. I completely agree that like Ant-Man as a character, he's just a little guy, so he should be fighting little things.
I mean, you need to put him up against villains and enemies and obstacles that are proportionate to what that character is, and not just what that character is, but what makes that character special. You have Paul Rudd, who has this great kind of infectious, bubbly energy. He's got that, that lovable, kind of cringy neighborhood dad kind of feel to him, and that really works. He's really great at that, and I think that's a big part of what really props up those first two movies. And so, I just think that the whole thing about trying to make an Ant-Man movie this big, grand, epic thing was just so misguided and clearly just terribly poorly executed. I mean, the whole quantum realm thing, I have no idea what they were thinking, setting an entire movie in the quantum realm, taking away the one thing that is the signature aspect of these characters, Ant-Man and the Wasp, is the fact that they can resize. They can, get really big or really small. None of that is relevant in the quantum realm at all. There's no sense of scale to any of it.
They did like resize several times.
Sure, but but relative to
it's also relative
CGI
to
garbage?
being
That's the thing is that sure, yes, there is resizing, but it's you've got no point of reference.
You've gone from like one plank length to like 2 plank lengths.
Yeah,
it's not it's not much of a difference.
It's just CGI garbage, CGI multicolored blobs floating around everywhere. It just doesn't make any sense.
They got rid of Luis.
Yeah, which I mean,
They didn't have Michael Pena in this one.
yeah,
Like
he was
the
great.
best. He was
He
like the
was
fan favorite character.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Both
He was so
movies,
funny
really.
in the first two. And so, I mean, I just think about the cool stuff that the first and I'm sorry, this is not an Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania diatribe, but
This is how passionately angry we are about this
well,
movie.
it's true. It's true because I mean, you think about what the first two movies did. I mean, like the train set fight in the first Ant-Man, that was really cool. Like doing the stuff with the Wasp running along the side of the knife being thrown in Ant-Man and the Wasp. That was really cool. Like doing stuff like that is really fun. Like the resizing lab that you can fit in your pocket. Like that's fun. Like the first two movies.
The Hot Wheels. The
Yeah,
Hot
the
Wheels
Hot
getaway
Wheels.
cars.
Yeah, like that's really good stuff. That's really, really good stuff. That's what made those first two movies fun. And so, yeah, the Quantum Realm was a big mistake. Making Kang the enemy was a big mistake. Just the whole visual, whatever you want to call it, just the visual approach to that movie was just completely misguided. And then you have the fact that not only was it just misguided, but the CGI, it looked bad. That movie just a very ugly orange-brown mess to look at. Clearly rushed to all hell in post-production. So, yeah, that was a really rough way to start a whole phase. And then you follow it up with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which was great. Then you have follow that up with Secret Invasion on Disney Plus, which was awful.
I still haven't seen it because
don't waste
bad.
Don't waste your time. I've shared with my Letterboxd review with you before. I believe it's the worst thing Marvel Studios has ever produced. It's really, really bad. I'm not even going to get into all that again because I'm just going to, that's going to be a whole.
Let's refocus and talk about your number 8 pick, Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's really bad. Well, hold on, but I'm not finished yet. And then you have after that you have Loki season 2, which was great again, fantastic, really, really well done. And then the Marvels, which I still haven't seen yet. I know people were kind of underwhelmed.
Heard it was very okay.
Yeah. The consensus seems to be people are underwhelmed by it. And then and also you had What If season 2, which was okay. I really wasn't vibing with it that much, but it's
as
fun.
good as the first.
But that just goes to show you. I mean, it used to be, even if Marvel put out a divisive thing like Eternals, where people are kind of divided on it, or put out like a genuine stinker, like I don't know, Thor: Love and Thunder was rough at points, but there was good stuff to that too. The point is that it's never been a 50-50 proposition for Marvel in a year like it's been like this, at least not in recent history. And so the fact that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was able to shine through the way it did, I think really just speaks volumes to how, for me, I think it really saved 2023 for Marvel in a lot of ways. Because if you didn't have that as a guiding light amidst a lot of, really rough releases, then I think then the Marvels and Crisis headlines would be more justified. But James Gunn knocked it out of the park. In the same year when he was confirmed to essentially become Marvel's chief competition, running DC Studios, he produced one of the best things that the MCU has yet given us. James Gunn, he knows these characters inside and out. He loves these characters to death, and that love really shines through every frame of every scene of these movies that he's put out. I mean, he really does, care about these characters, and he's given us 3 amazing stories that have really, I think have really opened up the MCU to a lot of people that maybe weren't big comic book movie fans before. I know people who said, I'm not even really that big into the Marvel brand, but I show up for every Guardians of the Galaxy thing. That's, it really is it's I think the very rare sub-franchise in Marvel that has really shown on its own. It has attracted audiences independent of this is just the next Marvel thing. And yeah, I mean, I think that, I just really think that he stuck the landing. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was a really fun romp, a really great time, great soundtrack, great character building, and just, diving into the Rocket's backstory and bringing the team back together one last time. And yeah, just, just a great summer blockbuster, a great time. and a really fitting send-off to this iteration of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Of course, the beauty of that property is it's constantly reshuffling its roster, and there's constantly people coming in and leaving, and so the Guardians of the Galaxy will endure, even if the roster looks different. But, this is the send-off for this team that we've fallen in love with since the first film in 2014. And, I think James Gunn hit it out of the park. Just really, really well done. I thought the High Evolutionary was a great villain. I know some people, when this movie came out, they were upset because they thought that, it was trying too hard to tug at your heartstrings with the whole High Evolutionary stuff.
I felt like it wasn't trying that hard. I felt like it just was an emotional story. I mean, you feel bad for Rocket because he's dying, and you can see how much it's affecting the rest of the team, and that's just objectively sad.
Absolutely, yeah. I never got that criticism. I don't think that movie tried anything that it didn't earn through just good storytelling and good writing. So yeah.
Just to add a point on the High Evolutionary, I think it was also kind of refreshing to get a Marvel bad guy that was just a bad guy.
Oh yeah.
And not someone who was trying to up in the system and had this moral view but took it to extremes.
Yeah.
They tried to kind of humanize Thanos a little bit, in that he's saving the universe by killing half of it. But the High Evolutionary is just a dick. He's just fun to hate because he's just a terrible guy.
Yeah,
that does terrible things, and that was kind of refreshing to see him get completely annihilated.
And then that's a very good point, because the MCU has so many examples of that. Zemo and Killmonger and Namor. They're a big part of their bread and butter is having these, and of course the biggest one being Thanos. And Loki, who fully becomes, a hero in a lot of ways, as the MCU has gone on. They're very big on having these villains who have an angle that, is persuasive, and have an angle that is sympathetic, and that you even want to see their side of the story. But yeah, it is very refreshing that the High Evolutionary has none of that. He is just truly a monster. And the great irony of that is that he always holds himself above these monsters that he creates, but of course he's the worst monster of them all. And yeah, I thought that was just a very nice, breath of fresh air, that you had someone who, he wasn't totally unambiguous. There was aspects of his backstory that are interesting, and his motives are interesting, but yeah, he is just an out and out villain. And oh dear, I'm forgetting his name, but that actor who does the High Evolutionary, Chukwudi does a fantastic job. Just great performance. I would say, of the three Guardians of the Galaxy villains we've gotten, my favorite, I would say. I think Chukwudi just knocks it out of the park. So, yeah, really enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Really saved the MCU, in 2023 for me, alongside Loki Season 2. And, I just really dug it. It's just a great, it's getting back to what Marvel does best. And I think that's really, to its benefit. So. All right, number 7.
So for number 7, I put Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
There it is.
No, I don't think we really need to talk about it because we just did.
All right, so
what a movie. Really good.
All right, well, my number 7 is going to be Killers of the Flower Moon by Martin Scorsese. I actually just watched this one recently, last week, I think. I didn't get a chance to see it in theaters, but of course, when it did come out in theaters, everyone was just beaming about this movie, and not that that's a surprise. Scorsese, he is not just one of our greatest living directors, I think that's obvious, but he's possibly my favorite director, if not, certainly one of my favorites, in my top 3. I love Scorsese movies. Goodfellas, Casino.
You sound like a true film bro.
He does great work. I don't know what to tell you. He does great work. Goodfellas, Casino, The Departed, Shutter Island, and Wolf of Wall Street, and The Irishman, and this. And The Aviator. Come on. It would really be difficult for me to come up with a Scorsese film that I've seen that I haven't enjoyed thoroughly, and many of them are some of my favorite films of all time. So
it's interesting though, because I actually heard that a lot of people, not that they didn't like Killers of the Flower Moon, but they thought it was just okay. Like
okay, well, yeah.
a lot of people said it was very middle of the road. So I'm a little surprised to say that you heard tons of people loved it.
Yeah, I mean, from what I saw and from what I heard, everyone that I saw talking about it was pretty positive about it. So, but yeah, well, suffice it to say, I loved it.
Yeah, I mean that's all that matters in the end.
Yeah, I mean, Scorsese's done it again. I want to make sure I'm getting some of these names right. So one moment while I pull this up. Because I do want to. Yeah, here we go. So obviously Leonardo DiCaprio, great as always. Also Lily Gladstone, fantastic, does a phenomenal job. Robert De Niro, I gotta say, I mean, Robert De Niro plays effectively the villain, the antagonist of Killers of the Flower Moon. And I mean, I gotta say, I mean, not taking anything away from Leo or Lily, because again, they did a phenomenal job. But I think honestly, Robert De Niro's performance might have been my favorite in this movie. Like Robert De Niro. He doesn't really get many opportunities to play an out-and-out villain or villainous type character, but he just chews the scenery in this so much. I mean, De Niro, I don't know what it is. I mean, there's just some magic about De Niro working with Scorsese versus De Niro working with anybody else. Like De Niro with anybody else, sure, I mean, he can still shine and still be great, but it's a lot of like very like drab comedies, like Meet the Fockers type stuff and all that,
Bad
where he's
Grandpa.
just playing, yeah, or Bad Grandpa, or where he's just playing the straight man. He's not really trying at all.
Yeah.
But when he collaborates with Scorsese, that magic comes out. I mean, Goodfellas.
That's what a great director will do.
Yeah, I mean, it's just and The Irishman, and this. I mean, there's just a magic with that collaboration. And so just the whole cast did a fantastic job. It's a very thought-provoking story. Obviously, I think it's a very valuable look at a largely unknown chapter of history and an area of history, and it's something I didn't know much about. I learned a lot about this situation with the Osage killings in the 1920s. I really didn't know much about it, or really anything about it. But it's a fascinating story. It's a tragic story. It's a cautionary tale. But most importantly, it's just a really great movie. I mean, visually beautiful. Huge practical sets, tons of extras milling around. It's a tale of. Yes, it's a tale of greed and corruption, like a lot of Scorsese movies are, but it's also a tale about love in a lot of ways as well, and enduring love, and what love can survive, in a lot of ways. And yeah, it's just really, really well done. So, I honestly, when I finally got around to watching it, I thought, I was a little bit worried that maybe this is going to be a little overhyped, honestly, because I had heard such unanimous praise, or, such largely unanimous praise for it. But no, not overhyped. It's really, really well done. So Scorsese, once again, he has earned his spot as one of my favorite filmmakers, if not my favorite. I mean, the guy just cannot seem to miss in my eyes. And I said this in my Letterboxd review, a great Scorsese movie, in a lot of ways, to me, is like a great novel you can't put down. It's a hard quality to explain, but it's, I get that same feeling with The Irishman. I get that same feeling with The Aviator and with Goodfellas. I mean, it's just, they've just got this kinetic quality to them that it's like, it's just a great novel, a great book you just cannot put down. You just have to just go to the next page and the next page and the next page. And The Wolf of Wall Street, my God. So, yeah, love Scorsese, and this is a great one. So it definitely has earned its spot as my number 7.
Well, for number 6, I'm going to challenge your number 10 spot and say Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny.
Okay.
And I know this was a bit of a controversial film. A lot of people weren't fans of it. But for me, I grew up on Indiana Jones. That was my favorite childhood franchise, more than Star Wars, more than, I don't know, Jurassic Park. Indiana Jones was just my go-to. Like, we had the original 3 movies and a DVD box set. I watch them all the time. And when Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, a lot of people hated that, but I loved it because it was a return to Indiana Jones. And I thought it was so cool. And with this one too, I was just, the music just really brings you back. I don't know what else to say about it. I really enjoyed it. I thought the seeing him in this kind of different time period was nice, but he still is fighting a Nazi, which is just fucking classic.
Yeah.
I thought the like train sequence felt as if it had been ripped like right out of the third movie. It just felt so classic. Personally, I don't know how I feel about the time travel specifically. And I think there were some issues with him, wanting to stay in the past, and then Phoebe Waller-Bridge like punching him and bringing him to the present. I think it would have been more meaningful if he chose to come back to the present. And that would have kind of been a more meaningful character arc, but the ending too, just he ends up with Miriam, and it's so sweet.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, oh, this character can finally rest.
Definitely.
So that movie made me really happy. And
Yeah,
so
really
that's
well
why it's my number 6.
Yeah, really, really well done stuff. So my number 6 is, here he comes, Mr. Oppenheimer himself.
Interesting placement.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan, and obviously another one of my favorites. He took on as he always likes to do, he took on a truly monumental task taking this on. I mean, of course, one of the great film memes of 2022 was how the cast for Oppenheimer just kept growing and growing and growing. I feel like they were adding a new A-lister every other day. I mean, it was just huge. It was crazy.
I remember fucking losing it when I saw Josh Peck in the background. I was just like, what?
They
got everybody.
It was unbelievable how many of these like big names they were getting on for the single movie. I mean, like literally every single role seemed to be stocked with somebody you recognize from something or other.
Even if it was just like 5 or 6 seconds of screen time too.
I mean, absolutely.
Everyone still just was dying to get on board, and I don't blame them.
It was incredible, and they were building these huge practical sets out in the real New Mexico desert. And of course, the big thing we were all hearing about is that Christopher Nolan managed to recreate an actual atomic blast for this movie in the desert. And so we were all like, what the hell is this going to be? What is this going to look like? I mean, we know, obviously, Christopher Nolan is not deterred by any kind of challenge. I mean, he
especially
wants to
the law.
Well, exactly. I mean, he wants to tell some of the biggest stories and some of the biggest canvases you can imagine. And so there was so much anticipation going into this. And that almost always works to a film's detriment when you come in with so many expectations and you come in with so much hype. Because even if the movie is great, it can still disappoint if it's not what you had built it up to be in your head. And yet, that's exactly what Oppenheimer did and more. I mean, this thing is this huge epic. I forget how long it is, but it's like 3 hours plus. And it's incredible. Obviously it's basically, it's basically uncovering not the entirety of Oppenheimer's life, but the critical 20 years of it from the 30s, 40s into the 50s. From his time pre-Manhattan Project at Los Alamos and then afterwards. And, it really, you have this great. So at first you have these, a very kind of contemplative philosophical debates about, early on in the film and later on in the film as well, about, this whole thing about the Red Scare and about, communism and about all this different kind of stuff and, kind of the conflicted younger man that Oppenheimer was and how that became then the sober, serious wartime leader at Los Alamos, in this race against time to build the bomb before the Nazis can get one. And then that's a whole other movie in and of itself, and you're wrapped up in that. Then you have the post-World War II, and then you have the actual dropping of the bomb, and then the immediate ramifications of that. And then you have the post-World War II, late 40s, early 50s thing, where now, time period where now Oppenheimer has to, basically tread a very careful line in, on the one hand, championing his, creation that transformed the world, but at the same time warning about the immense danger of what he created and warning about exacerbating that by chasing the quote unquote bigger bomb.
It's like a biopic and a war movie and a political thriller all rolled up into a single film.
Absolutely. And all of
and
these
so well done in all of those.
And in each of those three films is excellent, all combined into one film. And of course, Nolan, he loves his non-linear narrative, so we're jumping between the past and the future and the present and the so on and so forth. And I know that can get annoying. Obviously, we saw that taken perhaps to too much of an extreme with Tenet. But in this film, for such a long film, it keeps you hooked, glued to your seat throughout the entire runtime of it. Which is considerable. You're going to need to get up to go to the bathroom during this film, but you're not going to want to, because you're not going to want a second of this dialogue. Just the dialogue alone is just so crisp and so well done. And just the whole main cast is fantastic. Cillian Murphy, I am so glad that he finally got a chance to be the lead and be the star in one of these, because he's done such great work as a secondary, playing secondary characters in other previous Nolan films. He gets to take the lead in this, and my God, does he knock it out of the park. I think he's the shoo-in for Best Actor this year. I think it's his award to lose. I don't see how, obviously we get great performances every year, but this year I think this is the one. I don't know, man.
Chris Pratt as Mario is pretty convincing for me.
Yeah, well that's a whole other thing. But yeah, Cillian Murphy is incredible, and Robert Downey Jr. Absolutely kills it, and Emily Blunt, and just everybody is fantastic. And so
all at the top of their game for this film.
That's a very good way of putting it. You have so many top actors at the top of their game, just you getting this incredibly juicy, meaty writing to work with, and it's so well done. This is a movie I cannot wait to rewatch this.
And given how much you're praising it, I'm curious as to why it's as far down as number 6.
Well,
so I'm excited to see what else you have on your list. But this is some mighty high praise for. Below 50% ranking.
And remember, this is our top 10, so this is the cream of the crop already.
Yes.
So there's no shame in being number 6. But yeah, you'll have to see. And who knows, I might even make some revisions if I feel like it. But for now, this is where I have it. I loved this movie. Just like I talk about, another, Scorsese classic, instant classic. This is another Christopher Nolan instant classic. And obviously one half of the Barbenheimer phenomenon, which was, one of the best and most fun things to happen in movies, not just this past year, but in recent years.
Ever.
Period.
As a cultural movement.
Yeah, it was incredible. So, love it. Fantastic stuff. It's almost too big to try to summarize succinctly here, but just suffice it to say, I don't think there was any aspect of this movie that I would call in any way short of excellent. Honestly, the writing, the acting, the directing, everybody's on top of their game. Christopher Nolan, he takes on the biggest thing imaginable, and he absolutely kills it. And also that atomic blast, that looked so good. And it was practical too. He prides himself on that. No CGI. Those are real explosives causing that real blast, and it looked unbelievable. So, Oppenheimer, really great stuff. Really good.